Will I stand up next to a mountain and chop it down with the edge of my hand? Jimi Hendrix, originally James Hendrix, was born November 27, 1942. Jimi's father, Alan Hendrix, enlisted in the army before Jimi was born, and his mother, Lucille Jeter, died when Jimi was only 15 years old. This was the same year he started playing guitar. Guitar led Hendrix to travel with bands around the country with groups such as the Isley Brothers, King Curtis, and Little Richard. Even though Jimi Hendrix didn't know how to read or write music, he was able to play guitar like no other. It wasn't until Hendrix was noticed by Chas Chandler, the bassist from the Animals, that he became the frontman of his own band. Chas became Jimi's manager and brought him to Britain, where the Jimi Hendrix Experience was born. In a few short years, Jimi Hendrix was triumphant in becoming one of the most influential guitarists of all time, because he created a whole new style of music that was never heard before and broke down racial barriers in rock and roll. But tragically, Hendrix died at the young age of 27 and didn't live to see his impact on society. Jimi Hendrix was one of the first musicians that started to experiment with his sound in a variety of ways. He used the wah-wah pedal and even ripped up his amps to cause more distortion. The year Jimi Hendrix's first record, Are You Experienced, came out, it was a major success in both the US and Britain, selling over 1 million records worldwide. When Hendrix came to America, fans were blown away when he was able to play his guitar behind his back and even with his teeth. Jimi Hendrix pioneered the explosive possibilities of the electric guitar. Hendrix's innovative style of combining fuzz, feedback, and controlled distortion created a new style of musical form. His experiments with funk rhythms, heavy blues, electronic sound collages, and sensual charged romantic pop in turn laid the foundations for the later innovations in black rock and R&B by George Clinton, Miles Davis, Prince, and Living Colour. At the same time, Hendrix set a new standard in stage outrage with his jaw-dropping act of rubber limb playing positions and his blatantly erotic suggestions. At Woodstock, Hendrix mesmerized the crowd and created the most iconic moment of the 60s when he played his distorted version of the Star-Spangled Banner. Modern-day musicians such as Dave Grohl, Eddie Van Halen, and Prince all say they were heavily influenced by Hendrix. After months of playing air guitar to Freebird, what really got me into guitar was watching a documentary about Jimi Hendrix and picking up the Woodstock soundtrack. Listening to his version of the Star-Spangled Banner and Purple Haze, my brother played acoustic guitar and idolized him. I thought, I'm gonna get a guitar. Jimi's creativity on stage set him apart from other musicians. And the interesting thing was, his ethnicity was completely opposite of the white rock and roll norm at the time.
I met him back in '69. First of all, it's unusual for Afro-American artists to be in that genre. So in that way, we were just coming out of the civil rights movement back in the 60s. There was still segregated bathrooms down south. He was a big influence in that way. He was also, I think, a big influence in that he was so free form. He didn't fit the 2-bar definition of rock and roll. He was long solos and theatrical. He played behind his head and he light his guitar on fire, and he did radical stuff.
Hendrix was not only burning and destroying guitars on stage, but he was also breaking down racial barriers in rock and roll. With Noel Redding on bass and Mitch Mitchell on drums, the Jimi Hendrix Experience was one of the first times in music history that there was a rock and roll band fronted by a black man with white musicians backing him up. R&B was black music, rock and roll was white music, but here was this black guy, playing rock and roll like no one ever had. Hendrix showed that he had the ultimate civil right of doing what he felt was right, and he didn't let skin color get in his way. When Hendrix played at the iconic Woodstock Festival, he put together a new all-black band called the Band of Gypsies, with his old friend Billy Cox on bass and Buddy Miles on drums. Hendrix showed that music culture wasn't about the color of your skin or where you were from, but about making music and having a great time.
The Afro-American artists, for most of us, were the blues. And it was just really distant. It wasn't part of our lives. And then there was Jimmy, and wait a second, we're all the same people doing the same things.
Tragically, Hendrix died before he could see the full impact of his amazing music. The legendary Jimi Hendrix died at 12:45 p.m. on Friday, September 18, 1970. He was only 27 years old. It is believed that it was the stress of fame that overcame him and led him to overdose on drugs. Others believe that his death may have been a suicide. No matter what the cause, Jimmy's death shook the world. When Hendrix died, he became another amazing musician to join the 27 Club, which included everlasting icons such as Brian Jones, Janis Joplin, and later Kurt Cobain, who all died at the young age of 27. Jimmy's outstanding performing career was cut short at its peak, leaving people to wonder what music would have been like if he was still around. This tragic end led Hendrix to become a timeless icon in music history. Even today, almost 50 years after his death, people who didn't live at the same time as Hendrix are lifelong fans. Hendrix was extremely successful in the music industry because of his creative sound and eccentric showmanship. He tore down racial barriers in rock and roll by playing in a band with both white and black musicians. Sadly, Jimi Hendrix died young and wasn't able to see the everlasting influence of his music on the world. Even castles made of sand fall into the sea eventually.